これからみんなでめちゃくちゃ踊って騒ごう騒ごう。
Headbanger. Hit me. Hit me. Hit me.
Hi, this is Vince of vinceprep.com discussing the Stanford MBA admissions interview, alumni interview. This is part 2 in a series. Check out part 1 to understand who will be your interviewer and why Stanford chooses someone with a similar background as your interviewer. In this video, I'll be talking about what. So anyway, I have this post on Stanford GSB and alumni interviews. This video series is in addition to that post, but check out that post for some other information. And also don't forget to check out my general behavioral interview tips. This post continues to be the most popular post on my site because it's the most general. Behavioral interviews are scary for everyone, and they're useful not only for getting into MBA, but also for getting a job. So it's a very useful topic, and it's, I think, a misunderstood part of the admissions process, and it's actually not a hard way to interview. It's very common sense once you understand it. So that post as well, and those series of videos may be helpful to you. But for this video, let me deep dive into the Stanford interview. So, what kinds of stories should you prepare? So I have my kind of original analysis. I think there are 4 types of stories behavioral interview stories that I feel are the most useful. I think these 4 stories will cover 80% of the types of questions that you might be asked. So my little acronym, which I'm sorry doesn't spell anything nice, is DUBME, DBMI, DUBME, DBMI. Doesn't actually, there's no word in there. My son would make fun of me for trying to pronounce that acronym. So D stands for drive, B stands for bridge, M stands for motivate, and I stands for influence. So D, can you drive results, hitting a target? B, can you bridge diverse teams, people who don't communicate well? Can you help them find some common ground? Motivate, can you lift up someone who's below you, a junior, or either a junior or someone, whether or not they're older than you, anyway, someone who needs motivation. Can you motivate someone who's at your level or below your level? A kind of teamwork story. And finally, influencing seniors. Can you manage up? Can you persuade those in power who decide the budget to give you resources, for example, to open a new office or launch a new initiative or hire someone new on your team? So I think you need, actually for Stanford, I think you should prepare 4 stories about successful times when you drove results, bridged diverse teams, motivated juniors, and influenced seniors. And also you should create or prepare 4 other stories, 8 total, 4 plus 4. The other 4 are times that you didn't quite hit the target. You didn't quite bridge the diverse team. You just had to agree to disagree. You weren't able to motivate the junior for some reason. Either he wasn't interested, you couldn't find a way to incentivize her, or they simply had personal reasons. It was stuff beyond your control that prevented them from contributing to the team and doing what you were trying to get them to do. And finally, times you could not influence seniors. They said no, and you weren't able to change the no to a yes. You either couldn't understand the no, or you couldn't get the data or logic or political support, external support, to convince them that their initial reaction of no wasn't the right reaction. No meant no, forever. Or maybe, or try again in a year or something. Anyway, so prepare 4 stories about absolute achievements, and among those 4 achievement stories, have one that you think is the best achievement of your career. Because I found that Stanford alumni interviewers often like to ask a very broad behavioral question like, tell me about your proudest accomplishment. Presumably professional, if you're already working. And I think it's going to be one of those 4, driving a result, bridging a team, motivating a junior, or influencing a senior. It's going to involve, I think, one of those 4 types of behaviors. So prepare the 4 and have the one that you want to tell first because you're the most proud of it, whichever one. And similarly, on the negative side, I also know alumni sometimes like to ask a broad, general interview question about struggles. Tell me about your greatest challenge, a time when you couldn't drive a result, bridge a team, motivated junior, influence a senior, or something else. A more macro challenge, changing your company's organizational culture, convincing your boss to try something new. A struggle that is still a struggle. Let me talk about the questions behind the questions. So first of all, the question behind the question for proudest achievement or greatest accomplishment is, do you have leadership potential? In other words, do I want to follow you? Can you get things done? Can you change individuals? Can you change organizations? Can you change the world? There it is. I think that's the Stanford motto or mission or slogan. And similarly, tell me about a challenge. The question behind the question is more like, do I want to work with you? Do I want you on my team? If you're a big crybaby who throws a tantrum or gets really moody every time he doesn't get what he wants, I sometimes do that. I'll be honest. I try. Anyway, can you overcome being told no or not getting? You have an idea. You might think it's the most brilliant idea in the world, or for whatever reason, the team can't go along with it, or whatever it is. How do you act when you don't get what you want? If you bounce back and have a sense of humor about yourself and about the process and a sense of confidence and resilience, then I really want to work with you on my team. If not, maybe I don't. Maybe you're great and wonderful in your current role, but Stanford's a small school and they don't want people there who don't get along well with people. It's too small a school to have people there who are really not collaborative. So that's the question behind the question. I was going to stop this video and make a separate one for this last part, but let me just push on through and just make this a 2-part video series, not a 3 or 4-part series. The last part is how. How should you practice? And this is kind of a sales pitch to work with an admissions consultant professional. Basically, you don't want to do this the way you did your essays, right? You don't want to just tell a story in an interview like a monologue, like I'm doing right now. You want it to be interactive. It's a conversation. So you want to know your story and you want to have a structure for your story, but then you want to practice it by talking. I have this mirror method, and it's a good start. But for behavioral interviews, the mirror method is just a start. It's not going to get you there. You need to talk to a person. And this person should be someone who's relatively comfortable with asking behavioral interview questions, someone with some experience in HR, or hiring, or just someone who has a natural knack, or lawyer, or somebody, or police officer, someone who's really good at pulling the right information out of you as a conversation so that you don't just talk for 5 minutes like I'm doing, but you actually pause, you say as little as possible, and you want the interviewer to interrupt you. Your goal is not to dump a bunch of data on her. The school has all the data they need. They like you on paper. That's why you're invited to interview. This interview should be a conversation. Not every alumni interviewer is good at behavioral interviewing. So if they don't ask for more information, if it's just behavioral interview question 1, what's your proudest achievement? Behavioral interview question 2, for example, what's been your greatest challenge? And they just let you talk and talk and talk and they don't ask any follow-ups, that means they don't know what they're doing. It doesn't mean that you're supposed to give a long speech. And if they're not reacting, check in with them. Does this make sense? Is this the kind of story you were looking for? Do you want me to talk more about the result, or do you want me to talk more about the steps I took? You sort of need to interrupt a little bit and check in with them. And in that case, if your interviewer is extremely passive, but hopefully she knows what she's doing and she'll pull the information out of you. Pause, as I'm doing right now. A pause calms down the mood and tells the interviewer, she may have a question from 5 minutes ago, or 2 minutes ago, or 1 minute ago. She may not understand your world if you're talking about something particularly technical or using words that she's not familiar with. Or let's face it, outside the U.S., if her English is a bit rusty. They try to match you with someone from your same background, which could mean, unlike some other schools, Columbia, Kellogg, I've noticed the interviewers tend to be fairly young. Stanford, they can be quite senior because there may not be someone from your particular background in the last 5 years in your country, city, etc. So it might be just that their English is rusty. You want to speak slowly. You want to speak calmly. You want to use pauses because you want the interviewer, natural pauses, not awkward pauses, not awkward silence, like you just sort of stare off into space for 5 minutes. Right? That's uncomfortable. But pausing so the interviewer can say, wait a minute. When was this? Or why were you doing this? Or what was the purpose? Or who are these people? If you're using we and I and they without explaining these pronouns, if you're not identifying the players, or if you're just listing a bunch of action steps, which is a big risk of behavioral essays and interviews, and she just wants to wait, what happened? So what happened at the end? What was the result? Maybe then she cares about all these steps you took. Anyway, invite her with your pausing or your eyes or your words to clarify. Ask clarifying questions. Practice active listening. Anyway, how to practice behavioral interviews? In a word, work with an expert. Agos consultants are trained in behavioral interviews, or find someone in your area that you want to work with. But anyway, I think after a few practices with a loved one or friend or MBA holder who may not be an expert in behavioral interviewing or a current student at Stanford, doesn't mean they know how to do behavioral interviews. At some point, I think it's quite worth it, of course I do, to invest in professional, a second opinion of a real behavioral interview expert who can tell you if your answers are clear, too long, effective, and if your stories really sell us on what it is that you're trying to convey to your interviewer. Okay, let me stop this video. As always, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Subscribers are the first to know when I've uploaded a new video. I love making these videos. I make them whenever I can. If you subscribe, you'll be the first to know when I have made a new one. As always, best of luck with your applications, in this case your interviews, and bye for now.